What's going on, people? In this video we're about to break down episode 20 of Attack on Titan season 4, in which Eren used the true power of his attack titan to directly influence the past. This was by far the most complex use of Titan abilities that we've ever seen, and today I'll be explaining exactly how it happened, and also how Eren knew this moment was coming for over 4 years. Before we get into it though, I do these breakdowns every week, so I'd really appreciate if you hit that sub button if you haven't already, and as usual, drop a like if you like the video. Okay, so in the last episode, Zeke gained control of the Founding Titan, which gives him power over every single eldian on the planet. With this potential, he could finally complete his euthanization plan and sterilize all subjects of Ymir. However, being the amazing brother that he is, he only wants to do this with Eren by his side. In Zeke's mind, he assumes the reason Eren betrayed him is because he was brainwashed by Grisha to become an eldian restorationist, which is of course what happened to Zeke himself when he was growing up. For that reason, he uses the power of the founder to take them into Grisha's memories, so he can make Eren realize that he's been manipulated by their father. The first flashback they visit is one of Eren crawling and being held as a baby, and I don't know about you guys, but if I didn't know for a fact this was him, then I would have just assumed this was a girl. Regardless of that, now is probably the best time to establish the rules of traveling through memories, and rule number 1 is that the Yaeger bros are not actually traveling into the past, but rather this is more like a simulation created by the Founding Titan. In this simulation, they can witness key moments from Grisha's life, but no one can see them back since everyone is basically an NPC. This brings us to rule number 2, which is that because all of these memories are just visual representations of things that took place, it means that Zeke and Eren should not be able to change how anything plays out. We'll get back to this topic later on to explain how Eren did what he did, but for the time being, let's focus on Grisha himself. In this memory, we can see that he used his position as a doctor to get close to nobles inside the walls, and this is one of the reasons why Kruger thought he'd make a good spy. As a doctor with knowledge from the outside world, Grisha was one of the best, if not the best on the island, and he'd already saved the people of Shiganshina from a plague a few years earlier. This accomplishment is most likely how important people inside the walls heard of him, and by getting close to them, Grisha could eventually find out who has the Founding Titan. While observing this memory, Zeke thought that this was just another example of how his dad was a terrible person, since if his plan had been discovered, then it would have obviously put his new family at risk. Despite that, Eren wasn't so convinced, and as they continued to move through these memories, it became clear that Grisha did learn from the mistakes he made when raising Zeke. That was proven in this particular flashback, when after only a few years on Paradise, he managed to discover the identity of the true royal family. In this scene, he approaches the Rice Chapel and prepares to confront the royals and steal the Founding Titan, but in the end he couldn't go through with it and returns to his family back home. What this showed is that he loved his new son too much to risk losing everything, which is in direct contrast to how he treated Zeke, and was prepared to make his first son a soldier for an enemy state. In that way, Grisha had clearly grown as a person, and it would be a long time until he decided to visit the Rice Chapel again. Before we continue, there were a few bits of trivia I wanted to mention, the first being that at this point in the timeline, the King of the Walls was Uri Rice. This means that had Grisha gone down into the basement that day, he would have ended up fighting him instead of Frida, and it's feasible the fight might have ended differently. After all, Uri was shown to have lightning fast reflexes during his encounter with Kenny Ackerman, and at this time he would have had his shifter for around 6 or 7 years, making him far more experienced than Frida was when she was defeated. Another piece of trivia was that in this memory when Grisha discovered the map to the Rice Chapel, he then crossed paths with Kenny, who was now being employed by the royal family. Had Kenny found out what he was hiding in his pocket, then there's a solid chance he might have tried to slice his neck, which may or may not have led to Grisha turning into a Titan, so it's just a good thing for everyone that he was able to leave without being questioned. Now, moving on to one of the best scenes in the episode, we see that Grisha fell asleep in his basement while writing one of his famous books. In his sleep, he starts to receive memories from the future that belong to present-day Eren, and we're going to pause for a second to explain what exactly is going on. To start things off, it's fairly normal for a Titan shifter to see memories that belong to a previous user, but when it comes to holders of the Attack Titan, these guys are sometimes able to see memories from their future inheritors as well. One example is how back in season 3, Kruger told his successor to save Mikasa and Armin, despite neither of them being born yet, and now in this new episode a similar thing happens again. Because Eren and his dad are both holders of the Attack Titan, Grisha from the past is therefore able to see memories that belong to Eren in the future. In this specific scene, notice how when Eren looks down at this picture of Zeke, his dad then immediately reacts and apologizes to his first son. Then, when present-day Eren looks directly at his raggedy bearded brother, Grisha from the past reacts again as he sees a vision of a bearded man who he recognizes as Zeke. What this shows is that thanks to his Attack Titan, Grisha can occasionally see the future through Eren's point of view, and as the video continues we'll break down how this ability enables them to communicate through time. Anyway, after seeing everything so far, Zeke finally realizes that his assumptions were wrong, and their father didn't brainwash Eren to become an eldian restorationist. Because of this, Zeke begins to wonder why Eren then betrayed him and acts the way he does, since he's doing all the things his father would have wanted, only without ever being told to do so. Eren goes on to explain that no one had to make him this way, and that since birth he's just always had this drive to protect his own freedom, no matter what the cost. In this memory here, we get a look at the crime scene after Eren and Mikasa killed those kidnappers, and it was kind of funny seeing Zeke and his dad react in the same way. This moment here emphasized just how different the two Yaeger bros are, since Zeke's backstory made it clear that he was content to live a life inside the internment zone, whereas by contrast, Eren is someone who felt confined by the walls, and was quite literally willing to kill people who threatened his freedom. With this difference in character now being established, you might then be wondering why Zeke continued to take them through their dad's memories, and the answer is that he still believed he could change Eren's mind. In the same way that Sava once saved him, he is now desperate to save Eren, and so he's not going to carry out the euthanization plan until he finds at least one memory that might change his brother's perspective. As they walk through flashback after flashback, we get moments that are subtly relevant to things that Grisha says later in the episode. For example, in this memory he's taking care of children in his office, and then later when he confronts the Rise family, he collapses to his knees saying that he could never kill kids. Another instance is how he casually walks past this father and son playing with a ball, which is something Zeke always wanted to do, and later Grisha basically apologizes for never doing this. Eventually they get to this memory of their dad putting the finishing touches on his notebooks, and as he looks at the key he senses a presence in the room. This is another example of him receiving a memory from the future, because with Eren staring directly at him, past Grisha would have briefly seen a vision of himself from his son's point of view. To reinforce this point, it's worth remembering that although he previously commented on Zeke's appearance, he never once mentions what future Eren looks like, and that's because he doesn't actually see his younger son. Given that the visions he's receiving are coming directly from Eren's own eyes, then it makes perfect sense why he can strongly feel a presence but can't physically see him back. Anyhow, the next flashback is one from the very first episode of the series, and thanks to everything we know, this scene now has a completely different meaning. In this moment, Grisha asks his son why he wants to join the Survey Corps, to which Eren replies that he wants to know what it's like on the outside, and that if there's no one to carry on, all the deaths up until now will be in vain. That second line is super important, because although Eren was talking about the previous scouts who died, in Grisha's mind he was thinking about something else. In this moment, he realized that if he died without completing his mission or passing on his shifter, then the deaths of Kruger, Dinah, and all the other restorationists would be in vain. It was these words from his son that convinced Grisha to go and finally confront the royal family that day, and coincidentally it also happened to be the same day the warriors attacked. This coincidence was confirmed later in the episode, when he spells out that he didn't know which day the walls were going to be destroyed. Switching back to the memory in question, we then get a replay of the scene where he promises to show Eren what's in the basement. This time around, the camera pans out to reveal Eren standing there watching the moment play out, and because of Grisha's future memory inheritance, he feels the presence in front of him again just like he did in the basement. He then makes his final journey to the Rice Chapel almost a decade after he first attempted to confront them, and this sequence was undeniably the best part of the episode. As he begs Frida to save the people of the island from the titans outside the walls, you can see that she does genuinely have some concern for what he's saying, since the real Frida Rice wanted to save humanity on Paradise. However, it wasn't long until she was overtaken by the will of Karl Fritz, who began ranting about how Eldians should accept their fate because if they die it means that fewer people outside the walls have to suffer. This way of thinking is very similar to Zeke, which is why he had no complaints about what she said, but on the other hand, Eren was getting angrier and angrier as she kept talking. Remember, this memory is taking place on the same day his mother was eaten by a titan, and here you have someone trying to justify her death and the death of everyone else who was killed by the warriors. His intense feelings of rage could be felt by his dad in the past, hence why he reacts in this moment, and it's about time we break this moment down step by step. Point number one is that when this really happened all those years ago, Grisha's attack titan enabled him to receive memories from this version of Eren. The memories he received in this scene were essentially a live stream from Eren's perspective, meaning that Grisha was experiencing this one moment from both his own point of view and from Eren's point of view as well. He could feel the same emotions his son was feeling and see the same things his son was seeing, a connection made possible by the attack titan. Point number two is that Zeke took his brother into this memory without knowing this ability was a thing, so while Zeke could only watch on, it was Eren specifically who had the power to communicate with their dad. That's why when Grisha drops to his knees and hesitates to kill the royal family, his son tells him to stand, and then that memory of him saying that is sent into the past where his dad receives the message. Using this method, Eren motivates his father by giving him a speech that is heavily inspired by the one Kruger gave 13 years ago, and as it turns out, this is exactly what Grisha needed to hear to go ballistic and massacre the Rice family. An interesting thing to note is that we got this shot of Eren kissing Historia, which is a reference to the medal ceremony 4 years ago. During that ceremony, Eren experienced all of his father's memories from the Rice Chapel, including the memories that Grisha received from the future. What this means in reality is that 4 years ago, Eren didn't just see his dad's memories, but he also saw memories that were sent to his dad by future versions of himself. Ever since he kissed the hand, he knew it was him that motivated his father to kill the Rices, and on top of that, he saw a different memory that made him make this face. If you're wondering what that other memory could be, then we need to flash forward to after Grisha emerges from his Titan body, and a nice detail was that he took this syringe from the Rice Chapel, which he would later use on Eren. Regardless of that, the main point here is that in this scene, Grisha confirms that he's seen memories from a future version of Eren that's even further in the future than the Eren we've seen. Based on the context of what he's saying, it shouldn't be hard to guess what he's talking about here, and because Eren from the medal ceremony saw everything Grisha saw, it means this same vision was shown to him as well. As a quick side note before we continue, I just thought it would be funny to highlight how much of a coward Rod Rice was during this whole interaction, since with his wife and children being in potential danger, he was somehow the first one to try and make an escape. This cowardice was displayed again many years later, when he wanted Historia to shorten her lifespan by inheriting the founder, instead of simply doing it himself. Now, moving on, we've established that in the Rice Chapel, Grisha saw 2 sets of future memories. The first set of future memories belonged to this Eren, and they gave Grisha the resolve he needed to kill the royal family, while the second set of future memories belonged to an Eren that we haven't even seen yet, and those memories showed him something terrible. Another thing we've established is that 4 years ago when Eren kissed Historia's hand, he saw all of Grisha's memories from the chapel, which included those 2 sets of memories from the future. As a result, he's known for a long time about this terrible future that's meant to happen, and it's heavily implied that Eren himself is the cause. With that said, the last 2 questions from this episode that I thought might need explaining were how was Grisha able to hug Zeke, and why would he still give Eren the founding titan despite not wanting the future he saw to happen? To answer that first question, because Eren is staring directly at his brother, it means that his dad is able to see where Zeke is, just like when they were in the basement. He then goes to hug his son since he knows where Zeke is standing in relation to himself, and in the past dimension this seems to result in contact. I'm sure if someone in the past was to walk by, they wouldn't actually see Zeke. In fact, all they see is Grisha hugging thin air. But because we're seeing this in the past dimension, it gives off a powerful illusion that this is really happening. Of course, it needs to be said that this is only possible because of the Attack Titan's power, since if their dad had any other shifter, then he wouldn't be able to see the future through Eren's eyes. This emotional moment was enough for Zeke to acknowledge Grisha as his dad, because we've known all along that he wanted this fatherly love, and the reason he had all this hatred inside him is since he never truly received it until now. Finally, the biggest remaining question coming out of this episode is why would Grisha still give Eren the Attack Titan if he didn't want the terrible future he saw to happen? This is a mystery that has at least 3 separate valid reasons, and yeah, I'm going to start with the one that's the most obvious. During this scene when he asks Zeke to stop Eren, Grisha had no idea that earlier that day, his wife had been eaten by a Titan. If we flash forward to the moment he finds out, his expression completely changes, and the first words he says are that Eren needs to avenge his mother. Grisha knows more than anyone on the island that Marley are the ones responsible for destroying the walls, but with his time as the Attack Titan running out, the only person who can avenge Karla is Eren. This brings us to reason number 2, which is that due to the curse of Ymir, Grisha had to pass his shifter to someone, and he already established that his son might be a good choice. Earlier he realized that Eren had a strong desire to be free, which is an integral part of being the Attack Titan, and it's why he was prepared to tell his son the truth about the world. To put it simply, if he didn't pass it to Eren, then there was no one worthy that he could pass it to, and if he didn't give it to anyone, then there's a chance the shifter would have fallen into Marley's hands after his death, since the power would be inherited by a newborn eldian anywhere in the world. He must have figured it was a safer option to give it to his son, and hopefully in the future things can work themselves out. Finally, the third reason he chose to make this decision is that not doing so would have created a paradox, since Grisha already knows that future Eren possesses the Attack Titan. If he willingly chose to avoid this future, then he had no idea what would have happened. I mean, for all he knows, he might have started fading away, because if Eren never gets the Attack Titan, then future Eren wouldn't have been there to motivate Grisha in the chapel. Either way, Grisha had no way of knowing what would happen if he didn't follow the predetermined path, so this is likely a factor in why he did what he did. Anyway people, that was my breakdown for episode 20 of Attack on Titan Season 4, and I hope it clears some things up as these shifted abilities can get super confusing. If you enjoyed the video, then I'd appreciate if you hit that sub button, and let me know in the comments what you thought of the episode. Until the next one, peace out.